Okay, so I'm going to be making some floral covered cupcakes today. I'm going to start with the leaves. So I've got an array of colours. You can choose any colours you like. It's always nice to have one colour and maybe a couple of variations of that. But I'm starting with a green colour for my leaves. So you need a little bit of either corn flour or icing sugar on your surface, and some on your rolling pin. These little rolling pins are non-stick nylon, I think they are, and they're great. So I'm just rolling out my green sugar paste. You want it about the thickness of somewhere between maybe a pound coin and 10p piece. Okay, I've got some leaf shape cutters which are absolutely brilliant. If you make a lot of cupcakes, they're well worth the investment. They usually come in packs of 3 in assorted sizes. So just press them down, give it a bit of a wiggle, it should come free. So until you get sort of a bit more confident with it, it's best to just do a few at a time, because whilst they're having their next bit of pampering and preeming done, they're going to be drying out. So we've got some of these silicone leaf veiners, mould things. They actually come in one piece, but I broke mine, so they normally come like that in a pack. So you want to get these, put a little bit of whatever it is you're using to stop things from sticking. In my case I'm using icing sugar, and then you're just going to lay your leaf roughly so it's lined up, and then close down the other side and just give it a gentle press. And then when you open it, hopefully it won't stick too much. Just free it gently. There you go. So you've got a leaf that's on the one side it's got like a concave print, and on the other side it's got like a convex in relief print. So the concave side where the grooves run into the leaf, that's obviously the top. As you can see, I've ripped it a little bit at the top, but that's not a major problem, because again, whenever you're working with organic things like leaves and flowers and fruits and things, they're very rarely perfectly formed. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pinch that together at the top, which gives it a bit more of a natural shape, and it also covers up the fact that I'd torn it, which is great. Now, we don't want our leaves to dry perfectly flat, because they're going to look a bit sort of lackluster when it comes to popping them on the cupcake. So what we do is we want to put them onto something like this foam pad, and it's a former. It acts as a former, so you can tuck your leaves in and just sort of, it cradles them so that when they dry and they set a little bit harder, they've got a nice natural wave to them. So again, we want to dust off our veiner, lay the leaf inside, close it down, and give it a bit of a squidge. These do get stuck from time to time. You do have to then go and pick them all out and wash them all out, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, so you just want to again encourage your leaves to sort of have a bit of a shape to them as they're drying off. If you don't have these things, marvellous though they are, you don't have to use them. Another trick is to, if you take your leaf and maybe the back of a knife, for example, because you don't want to cut through it, you just want to indent it, and you can just give it a loose impression of a leaf. And sometimes these more simplified ways of doing things, they give their own nice effect anyway, and sometimes that's more of a desirable finish. Depends what you like. So there's, whoops, there's with the veiner, there's just with the back of a knife or the handle of a teaspoon or whatever, and they'll both look great on top of a cupcake underneath the flowers. Okay, so roll out your sugar paste, floured your rolling pin properly. And I always work my flowers to, I know I keep going on about these thickness of a pound coin, but it's the best way to try and get over roughly how thick you want it. A little bit thinner maybe. And then we're just going to take our shape and gently pop it through with your finger. If you have long fingernails, you're always going to leave an indentation on there, so use the back of a paintbrush or the back of a blunt knife or something, because it's not very attractive to have fingernails in anything to do with food, I don't think. Okay, so try and get out as many as you can. And then I've got 4 there, so that's a good number to start with. Just roll up your excess, because the longer you leave it out all bitty and fragmented, the quicker it's going to dry out. And then you can't reuse it. Okay, now these are pretty in their own right. They look great. What you could then do is, if you're working with children or whatever, take a contrasting colour, and you could just give it each of your flowers a nice little centre, something like that. That's quite a nice simplified version, but I'd like to add a little bit more interest to these. So using a foam pad, what this does is it allows you to mess around a little bit with your flower shapes on a nice soft backing, so that there's a little bit of give. And I'm going to take one of these bone tools, which you can get pretty easily on the internet, and I'm just going to, starting at the tips of each, just gently pull back. And what you see happening there is that the flower is just starting to take on a little bit of a different shape. It's also curling the petals upwards, so we're losing that perfectly cut shape, and we're starting to have something that's a bit more flower-like. Okay, so that's one way. It's just a case of messing with them, really, doing whatever you like. Rather than go down the centre, you could go around the edge. Again, just be really careful, and then that will achieve a different result again. And you can just play around with it, and if you mess it up, just roll it all up together. See there, I've gone a bit heavy-handed on that one petal, but I'm not too worried about that, because I'm going to have a few different bits and bobs. You can just either curl it up or cover it over with another flower when you come to place them together on the cupcake. So, just play around with it. When you've decided that you're happy, what I tend to do is I just sort of give it a little bit of a prod into the centre, and that's going to give me somewhere to leave my central part. So I'm just going to keep this bit really simple. I'm going to roll some little petit pois sized balls, and then with a little bit of water I'm just going to pop those in there. Now I'm quite happy with those, they're going to look really pretty. Or again, if you want to add a little bit more interest, luster dusts are a great way to do that. I'm going to use a little bit of gold, I think, on these. So using a dry brush, just a very, very small amount. You can dab it off on a piece of tissue paper or something if you wish. And then you can just go over those centres and outwards a little bit if you want to. And because I've only used a very little amount there, the green of that central ball shape, that's still shining through. I mean, it's super quick. So you've gone from a basic shape to something with a little bit more interest. Now they'll dry there quite happily as they are. If you want to have a little bit more movement to them, pop them in onto the format and then leave them to dry there. Okay, all of the flowers that I'm making at the moment, I'm just using sugar paste, but sugar paste doesn't set hard ever, so your finished flowers are going to be pretty delicate, which is fine so long as that you handle them with care, but you can always add a little bit of florist paste to your sugar paste if you want to come up with a stronger icing to use.